Welcome back, everyone. So in this upcoming series of videos, what we are going to discuss at a high level is what are these actual systems that we're designing in the first place. Before we even start digging into the nitty-gritty of how you make the actual decisions when it comes to designing a specific system, we need to understand at a high level what is these systems and what are the environments that they live in. With our particular case, we're always talking about the internet, and we're talking specifically about building web applications. So knowing that, let's take a dive into a high-level diagram that I've made for you of what a system mostly comprises of. You can, of course, dive deep into these, and then these different pieces will get much more complicated. But right now, I'm taking a high-level snapshot of this, and we're going to dive into each piece so that we understand and level set what it is that we're talking about when it comes to using a web application, as well as loading a web application, and then what it takes for that web application to actually run properly. I'm mostly going to talk about an application that I believe everyone is familiar with, which is Facebook. So if you're unfamiliar with Facebook, you can just go to facebook.com, sign up, and you'll get a general idea of how that application works. In many different applications that exist on the web, if you take a high-level snapshot of how the system is designed, it's probably very similar to how Facebook is designed. The decisions and the trade-offs that they make inside is more nuanced, and that's where the actual differences are going to be. But for our particular case, this diagram is good enough, and in the context of Facebook, we're going to do a deep dive. Now, there's a lot of pieces that you see here, and for now, a lot of them might not make any sense at all. So that's perfectly fine. We will go into each of them individually. For now, I want to focus on the one that we're all familiar with, which is the browser client. Now, a browser client is pretty much this thing that you interact with every single day. You're interacting with it right now watching this video. What is a browser or a client? When you think about the different devices that you have, whether it be a desktop or a laptop, a phone, a tablet, or any kind of device like a smartwatch, you have these different things that you use on them, which you call applications. And a browser is a very specific kind of application. Something like Google Chrome, that we are all very familiar with, is a browser application. This browser allows you to interact with the web and access different websites. These different websites, most of the time, are also web applications. On a phone, you might have a very similar app called Safari, for example, if you ever use an iPhone. And this, just like Chrome, is a browser application. You can also access the web the same way you can with Chrome. You can access facebook.com and get the Facebook website or web application. A client, on the other hand, you could see as something more direct. So, similar with an iPhone or with a tablet, you can download the Facebook application. By downloading the Facebook application, you can access Facebook directly without having to go through a browser application like Safari or Chrome or Firefox or Opera or any of the other browsers. With the Facebook application, you can just access the Facebook app directly. And this you can call a client. Similarly, on this smartwatch, I have just a plethora of different applications that allow you to access different web applications, or you can access directly through different browser applications. It's just meant to capture the same idea, just a different device. So now that we understand what is a browser and a client, what is it that it does whenever you utilize this browser client? So let's take Chrome as our example. We've all seen this screen before whenever we use Chrome or any browser. Up here, you type in the URL of the website you're trying to access. So here, let's say you type in www.facebook.com. When you hit enter, what happens is that if you have a stable internet connection, you will now access the Facebook website or web app. Here, what is happening when this happens? We take this for granted because we do this every day. Now, many of you may already know the answers, but let's dive a little deeper into this to get a better understanding. When your browser client wants to access www.facebook.com, what you are doing is you are making a request for the files that help you actually build out the facebook.com website. Your browser does not have these files natively. Because if it did, think about the billions, if not trillions of different websites that exist. Your browser doesn't have access to all the files in order to build any of them. Your browser has to make a request for the appropriate files in order to build the website that you're accessing. So where does this request go? Well, if you were to simplify it, where it's going is actually a server, which is a physical device somewhere in the world that's connected to the internet that holds all of those files that allow you to build this said website. So here, if you're trying to build Facebook.com, you're going to be accessing a Facebook server that has the files to build the Facebook website. And when the server receives your specific request from your browser, it will then send back a response with the appropriate JavaScript, HTML, and CSS files that your browser needs to use in order to actually build the Facebook website. So that is really all that's happening. It's pretty much just a browser client that is making a call or a request to a server, and then that server is sending back a response with the appropriate files or data that the browser needs to build said website. This is pretty much all it really boils down to at a very simplistic level. The problem here is that this does not really scale well when it comes to the billions of users in the world accessing the billions of websites. Even Facebook is getting billions of requests every single day to run its application. This is where you have to introduce some more pieces in the diagram. So we've discussed the browser client and we've discussed the server. We'll talk about the server in more detail later, but here what I'm showing you is a basic snapshot of that bigger diagram we saw earlier in this video. But here we're still focused on what is happening when you make a request for a website. So now that we're taking a look at this piece of it, we're going to discuss more of the different portions here in the upcoming video. So now that we understand what a browser client is, let's talk about the next piece in the next video.